Hello to the girls and the gays. Hey, besties. Happy Sunday. Happy Pride Month. Happy Mars in Leo to all my fellow Mars in Leo girlies. Happy Mars return to us. Happy Mercury return to all the Mercury and Gemini people. What else we got? I think we already talked about Venus and Aries. I hope y'all are doing okay now that Mars is in Aries. Mars is in Leo. Ciao. It's a lot happening. Um, Before I just dive in, my books are open. If you missed the last announcement, my books are open with limited availability. So if you need to schedule something, I would schedule it now because you're gonna have to pick a date in the future that actually works for you because it may not be available when the time actually comes. So yeah, books are open. 35 to 45-minute slots unless you want to buy some extra time. Then I have 15 minutes available for purchase as an add-on. Other than that, feel free to subscribe to my Patreon as well. You can join as a free member. You can join for a small donation each month of $3 or $5. All of that helps me pay my bills because I have to pay bills out of my business account. I may possibly have some massive fines to pay on my business as well, unless I can get that worked out because I was told that I needed a sales permit to sell my journals last year and I didn't have one. And long story short, once I looked into it, this ended up not really being true because I didn't make that much money off the journals. So I'm not even in the I'm not even in the fraction, whatever, I don't even meet the criteria to have needed a sales permit, but the previous accountant that I had told me that I needed to get one for the Texas Comptroller of Public Accounts. And them people, I don't like them people. But anyway, they sent me some massive fines. So if I can't get that worked out, there's going to be some problems. Don't run a business. Don't run a business. It's not worth it. I should be able to get it resolved, but we will see. So anyway, lots going on in the sky. So I am caffeinated. It's decaf, but it still feels like liquid crack. So I'm like, oop, already halfway through it, more than halfway through it, almost finished with it, and tweaking a little bit. But it's okay. We ball. How are you guys doing? How is Mars and Leo for you so far? How is Mercury and Gemini for you so far? Are you feeling the sun in Taurus a little bit more? Because I'm not personally just yet, but I am seeing a lot of it, especially around queer discourse online. And just some kind of personal conversations with friends, especially after that Taurus new moon. So it is Scorpio full moon week as well. The moon will enter Scorpio tomorrow morning. But today we have a Mercury Jupiter conjunction in Gemini, so we're getting that out the way early. Tomorrow we have Mercury square Saturn in Pisces, which that seems annoying and probably part of all of this. And then come Wednesday we will have the full moon in Scorpio. And I think the rest of the week is just the moon moving around. So how's that going for you guys? Things are super mellow in CA. Yeah. Prayers up to people in California because what a fucking mess. Mars and Leo definitely came with some hands, and we did say that that might be kind of a volatile transit with Mars being conjunct K2. So I guess we're seeing it play out already. Especially the Trump and Elon blowout that happened as well. Just weird things. Hey, bestie. My Mercury return came and I didn't even care. And nobody moved. Yeah. Oh, Lo has Mercury. I keep saying Mars has Mercury in Gemini as well. Feeling like shouting fuck Tom Homan all day, every day, and for the rest of eternity, honestly. Full moon has hands. Past week was rough. Indeed. Last week, what I said last week was facts. Honestly, that live did eat. Shout out to our mushroom friends. Um, wow. Yeah. So lots of shit happening immediately. So what I want to do today is pull moons. I am not with the words this morning. I was even trying to do like my pre live prayers that I do every time and just like could not get the words out. So I don't know if my brain is moving too fast for my mouth or what's happening, but trying to get it together. I'm also very tired, but I've been like microdosing caffeine all week, which I think is also part of the problem. Because working full time will do that to you. I understand why everybody has some kind of substance addiction. You kind of need one to survive all of this. And especially with caffeine, caffeine is just like, hey, turn the sleepy off. Because it's not giving you energy, if you were wondering. It's just making you less aware of your sleepiness. It's turning off the receptors in your brain that would be like, hey, maybe we should take a nap. No, caffeine is like, actually, you should keep going and ignore that feeling. And that's why that crash be crashing. Anyway, um, something I was thinking about yesterday before I pull cards is like, I forgot that the sun was still in Taurus for another week. The sun will enter Gemini next Sunday. Yeah, Sunday or Monday. And um I forgot cuz okay, so like what's kind of just been happening on Twitter and on I guess TikTok as well and conversations I've been having with friends. There's a lot of like queer discourse especially around like bisexuals. There's always discourse around bisexuality, but then also around like lesbianism and specifically what it seems like is this whole words mean things thing that comes up with Gemini transits or that comes up with Mercury and Gemini. And to be fair, me personally, I don't know if I think Gemini is words mean things as much as like some of the other mutables. Like, I feel like maybe this is just me. Maybe y'all disagree. I don't know. Let me know. But I feel like language is very flexible. And words mean different things to different people. That's kind of what I feel about Gemini versus maybe Mercury somewhere else. It's like, yeah, words mean things, but also words mean different things to different people, and language is flexible depending on what it is that you're talking about and the person that you're talking to and the context of what it is that you're talking about. So it's a combination of like language, but also the person speaking, you know, and as much as we maybe want to take words at face value for whatever the definition is of that word, especially if you speak English, there's so many different like connotations for a word versus just the dictionary definition of it. And a lot of that changes with culture and with time and with trends and things like that too. So, and with education. So, uh, yeah, I kind of feel like, you know, whenever we get to Virgo transits, for example, when you get to Virgo transits, people be arguing about semantics real bad, like real bad. And I'd be wanting to say like, look, I know that's what they said and that's what you heard, but come on. We can't be so rigid. We can't be so rigid that there's no other possible thing that this person could have meant, which, you know, to me feels like Virgo Pisces dramas because there's like, well, maybe they meant this on the Pisces side, but then but this is what they said thing on the Virgo side. And then you add in the Gemini and Sagittarius thing of what you believe something means or what you believe somebody said or what you believe about the word that somebody is using and da 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 da. So anyway, all of that to just kind of frame this because Mercury in Gemini is one of the only planets right now that's in its own sign. I think it is the only planet right now that's in its own sign. So that motherfucker is ruling the season right now. And it's got Jupiter on its side. And then when them two get together, worst possible conversations. So anyway, also hello KJ, see that you just joined. Uh yeah, so all that to say like people have been upset about people like Jojo Siwa and Carrie Fletcher and some other famous lesbian artists coming out with boyfriends all of a sudden. And as far as I know, they from what I've heard, because I don't follow either of them much at all. I just be in I just be in conversations where gay people are. Um, I don't think, to my knowledge, that Fletcher or JoJo Siwa ever said that they were explicitly lesbians. I believe, I guess they've said that they were maybe sapphic or queer. I don't think either of them claimed bisexuality. I think they either use the term sapphic or queer. So it's like, even though a lot of their music is geared towards sapphic, which, as far as I know, is women loving women. I don't know the definition of sapphic. Maybe I'll look it up. I don't know if I care that much today, but uh, they're like all up in arms that they're losing lesbian representation and all of this other stuff. And it's like, well, you know, bisexuality and biphobia gets weird and gets tricky, because I feel like, as somebody who previously identified as bisexual and to some extent identifies as bisexual very, very loosely, because I wouldn't date. I'm not really romantically interested, and sometimes not even sexually interested in men, but I dabble. So I've previously said biflexible, because like I can go there, I just choose not to. And usually when I'm there, I'm like, okay, I'm ready for this to be over. So it's not really my thing. Anyway, um, come on, loosely, yeah. So it's like not really my thing, but if I'm in a situation and I want to try it out, I'm not gonna be weird about it. It's like whatever. But a lot of people, are also not very fluid. They're very rigid or very fixed in their sexuality, and that's fine. And then there are some people who have their preferences, and that's fine. And there are some people who want this and who want that. So I feel like whatever you label yourself, me personally, I feel like whatever you label yourself, like, yes, these labels have their designations and people who feel very strongly about them. But whenever you're talking about humans doing human shit, people are going to do whatever they want. And sometimes life comes at you fast. You can identify as a woman for 25, 29 years, and then one day be like, you know what? Let me stop lying to myself. I'm a man. And then you transition. And I feel like because I've had that experience and had people, like my parents and family members be like, but this is who we thought you were for so long. And we're so sure that this is who you were. And now you're this. And so what does this mean for all of this time that you identified this way? It's like, well, that's who I was at the time. Like, why do I all of a sudden, and this is just me personally, I know other trans people feel differently. Like, as much as I had my thoughts, my inner deep down repressed thoughts about my identity whenever I was very, very little, it doesn't change the fact that I still more or less willingly lived life as a woman who loved other women for the majority of my life. Does that mean I wasn't a lesbian at the time? I don't think so. I think it means I was a lesbian at the time. And now I'm a straight man, biflexible man. Like, shit happens. Life comes at you fast. So I feel like when people get really hung up about, like, for example, they're saying for Fletcher, having dated women all this time and now she dates this man, well, she should have never said she was a lesbian. First of all, she never said she was a lesbian. But if she did, is that so wrong if that's what was true at the time? It was true at the time. There is no reason why at the time, unless she was dating men back then, and I don't know her story, but if she was, if she wasn't, if she was only exclusively been with women and she herself believed that she was only into women, why would it be wrong for her to call herself a lesbian and market herself to a lesbian audience? Even if one day she falls in love with a man and now she identifies as something different. I don't feel like that needs to invalidate the whole first half of her life experiences. And like, yeah, people be in denial and people be repressed and people be this and this and that, blah, 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 blah. But it's like, I don't know, it feels like another aspect of this conversation around truth and what is true versus what is fact versus what is whatever. But yes, exactly. I think it's pretty straightforward, lol, that people are who they say they are at any time, and it's not my business anyway. Exactly, because I'm not in your body. I'm not in your life. Nothing I do really has anything to do with who you are, but it does seem like we make things about us in a way. And I know there are reasons for this, right? So like the other side of the argument, um people were doing the same with Renee Rapp coming out as lesbian after she said she was bi. See, and this is another thing, right? Because I know, so, okay, on the one hand, there's, to me, what is a fact of life is that people are going to change. And like a fact of life and being alive in general, fact of the universe is that things are going to change. Identity, despite being represented by fixed signs, is mutable to some extent. Like there are some things that you can't change, like the color of your skin, to some extent, unless you bleach or whatever. But you can't really change like your ethnicity or your race. You can't really. I actually don't know if I fully believe that you need to be born this way and there needs to be a gay gene or anything like that either, because I just don't think that things that are socially constructed or socially influenced need to be these like biological facts. Me personally, I just feel like that gets into this weird thing where now you have to like quantify or qualify something biologically or genetically or whatever, and that turns into a whole eugenics kind of thing after a while. Because if you argue that some people can be born a certain way, then you can also make an argument to, like, I don't know, to treat that as some kind of an illness or malformity or dysfunction or whatever, and I don't like that either. So to me, I'm kind of like, yeah, if somebody just decides one day that they want to be whatever thing and then they're happy being whatever thing, I don't really have a problem with that. And I don't, if there's something I'm missing, tell me, but I just don't know what that has to do with anybody else. Like I don't. So um yeah, I just feel like people are whoever they say they are in whatever given moment, and the decisions that they make while identifying as whatever thing don't have to be a reflection of everybody else that shares that identity. Like I think we run into a trap. Like I think we really trap ourselves and limit our experiences whenever we say that, XYZ identity, like the tropes and the stereotypes that come out of people. Not Rachel Dolezal although. I think like all of the stereotypes and the tropes that come out of and the projections and everything else that get placed onto identities, like that's gonna happen regardless, and I don't think it makes your experience any less real or valid to you. Your experience is not going to be somebody else's experience because y'all live in two different bodies with two different consciousnesses. You know what I mean? So I personally don't give a shit if lesbians date men. I don't care. If you've dated 90% women in your life and you fell in love with one man, I don't care. I'm not gonna sit here and be like, you that's not a lesbian. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Sometimes I still feel like a lesbian as a man. I don't care. I also don't care to sit out here and be like, to claim anything. It just doesn't matter to me. And to me, Gemini moon rising, words are just like a means to a larger conversation. They're just an approximation for more nuanced conversations that honestly are not going to make sense, especially with gender and sexuality. They're not going to make sense at face value. Like they're not going to make sense. It's hard to speak to something. I was talking to Samaje about this actually. And yes, this is the Sun and Taurus themes. You are correct. And also the Jupiter and Gemini themes. But like for example, I was talking to Samaje about gender, and shit, I just lost my train of thought. I was talking to Samaje about gender. What about gender? Damn, Samaje, what were we talking about? What were we talking about? Damn. Okay, it'll come back to me. Let me read y'all's stuff in the chat. I feel like it's a boundary issue regarding policing other people's identities. This comes up around autism and self-identification too. Yes, agree. Need Taurus transits to wrap it up, child. I definitely agree. Yeah, and like let's talk about this because this is really where I'm going with this. I feel like yes, there are social and political implications in certain societies for certain identities. And therefore, some groups are going to struggle more in certain societies because of the general like disposition towards certain identities and different laws and access to different things and harm and violence and all of those things. Like, not trying to discredit that at all, especially as somebody who is, you know, at risk for a lot of that shit. So I think there's a place and a conversation for that. But I think what gets tricky is whenever we start trying to pin that too much on people who are just trying to express themselves as best they can, you know, or trying to navigate their own identity and, you know, where they belong and what needs to happen. Because to me, like, we can talk about passing, right? Being in cishet passing relationships, or passing as a trans person, or passing as being white passing, or being you know, whatever, all these different ways of looking like you assimilate to a group, whether you actually do or not. I feel like sometimes, and this is where the Sun and Taurus thing I think is coming in for me, the Sun and Taurus and the Mars and Leo thing, because, you know, Sun and Taurus is about that assimilation based on physical characteristics, and then Leo is about visibility, having an identity or just a self that's visible to other people. So it's like people do this with trans men a lot, where because there's, you know, there's a lot of people who will say things like, you know, trans men tend to pass better than trans women, or trans men tend to get accepted into society as men a little bit better, or whatever, because of reasons, and because of patriarchy, and because of misogyny and everything else. And it's like, that may be true to an extent. And also, nobody really likes to talk about violence against trans men that happens all the time. And nobody also talks about the way that trans men's identity are actually invalidated by other men once they find out that you're trans. It just turns into more misogyny. So, like, all of it, a lot of times, all of it's misogyny, like on all ends. Misogyny towards trans women, misogyny towards cis women who are queer, misogyny towards trans men. A lot of it is still, at the end of the day, these patriarchal designations of what a person is and what a person should look like based on whatever characteristics. And so it doesn't really make sense to say that trans men don't experience, you know, any kind of transphobia or as much transphobia whenever our lives are still threatened in the same way, due to some of the same things that threaten trans women. It's not to say that there aren't differences between like those experiences of harm, but they each have their own versions of harm that they're experiencing that all kind of tie back to the same system of um patriarchy, you know, and religious violence and everything else. But then we, for whatever reason, like, need to disqualify each other's experiences for some reason. I don't know, to make ours more valid, or to keep more attention on the things that we're experiencing. I don't know. Like, I just think it's very easy to get in the weeds about something that we could all just be on the same team about. Like, if the issue at the end of the day is that being queer in any capacity, whether that's based on your sexual orientation or politically or whatever it is, like, going against the norm in any form is dangerous. And I would almost argue it gets more dangerous the more that you actually like that you physically look like you assimilate or blend in, because now people are looking at you like, hey, you are now a representation of us because you look like us, and you need to behave like us, otherwise, I don't know, bad things happen. Does that make sense? Like, I think about this a lot with people who have Taurus placements. I know previously, and I did want to clear this up actually. I know previously, you know, the div for lib space used to really be like Taurus is the police, you know, and like, I don't like that anymore. I do think in the cultural context, like, there is something to be said, like the larger, broader context, there is something to be said for Taurus as an archetype being the people who are forcing conformity, right, on others. But I think for people who have Taurus placements, often what I see is a huge pressure to assimilate because of how they look. or like extra focus being placed on their appearance, and that being a means of manipulation, like from other people onto them. And so then it leaves them feeling like they have to measure up to some kind of identity or some kind of um standard that they just don't fit in, because nobody fits in it. You know what I mean? Like, um trying to think of an example. Like, if you're non-binary and you're not like performing androgyny and you have Taurus placements, um it's very easy for people to never acknowledge that you're non-binary. They're going to constantly misgender you. They're going to constantly project whatever gender identity onto you because you don't look androgynous. Whereas if you are someone who looks androgynous, people are more, they're either more likely to respect your pronouns, respect your identity, or they're more likely to bully you because you don't assimilate. So it's like, yeah, exactly. Samaje, I gave up on the pronouns. Like, and that happens to a lot of people. And so then it turns into this whole thing where they turn non-binariness or agenderness or whatever it is into like a phase or a fake identity on the way to, either being trans or on the way to being cis or whatever else, because, it becomes too much to try to get someone to just call you by your fucking name. And that happens with bisexuals as well. I think like you get scapegoated by either side of the community. You're either dealing with straight people who think that you just are slutty and you want attention, or you're dealing with gay people who think that you're really just straight and, wasting time. I don't know, you're dealing with gay people who think you're just straight and should just go be with straight people. And that's like not fair either. So there's something here too, I think, with, the Pisces of it all, where it's like things are not what they look like. Like, I know that's uncomfortable for you. Things are not what they look like, and things are also not exactly what they sound like either. Maybe this being part of the whole Saturn and Pisces, Jupiter and Gemini crossover. It's like you can only do so much with words and language. That's what I was gonna say earlier. I knew it would come back. I was talking to Samaje about how I get annoyed with myself and with other trans people having to explain to other people what transness is, when it's like there really are no words for it. You could do your best. To me, it feels like such a spiritual experience that if you try to explain that to somebody, they're just gonna think that you're crazy. And it's like, I have to be crazy, but there are people who think they have a direct line to God. So like, if these are the same things, like if I feel like I was like, if the best way that I can describe transness in plain English is to say I feel like I was born in the wrong body, people can take that statement and run all over the place with it, all over the place, and come up with things and conjure up things that I didn't even say based on this one thing of I feel like I was born in the wrong body. To me, that's just like a spiritual thing of like, it's not even about being a man in whatever like patriarchal designation of a cis man is. Like, I really don't identify with that shit. I don't know what that means. I don't know what cis men deal with and what they feel like, and like what being a man means to them. So that's not my definition of being a man. There's just something deep within me that feels like whatever this female thing is, on a body level, not even like on a mental level, but like on a physical level, it's like there are parts missing, and there are parts that I don't, that just feel like they shouldn't be here. It's this feeling of like not wanting to be, not even not wanting to be in this body, but just feeling disconnected from this body because it feels like it's the wrong one. And to me, sometimes that feels like some karmic shit. That feels like some past life shit. That feels like the last time I was here, I was a man, and that's like the closest. That's like the closest. I don't know, jump, whatever. But right as I'm talking about this, it's like you really don't know what that means unless you're having that experience. And you could also be having this experience and another trans person doesn't even feel that way. So it's like you can only do so much with language. And I also don't speak for all other trans people. So I'm not going to sit up here and try to explain transness as if it's this specific thing for all trans people when it's not. Everybody has a different relationship to their identity in general. There are people who relate to blackness differently. There are people who relate to gender differently. There are people who relate to their class positions differently. Like, there's just so many ways that people can have an embodied experience and struggle to talk about it in a way that other people are going to be like, oh yeah, that makes sense, I get it. Sometimes you're just not going to fucking get it. Sorry. And just because you don't get it doesn't mean that it's now got to be a statement about you, because you and this other person, like, is trans people in Austin who are Republicans and who believe that trans kids shouldn't be getting gender affirming care. Like, okay, girl, that's how you feel. That don't have nothing to do with the rest of us. Keep that to yourself. But she's going to talk about it, and ain't nothing I can do about that. And then people on the right can run away with whatever narratives that she spin and then be like, look, well, this is a trans person who feels this way. Okay. And here are a whole bunch of other trans people who feel a different way. So there's not one singular truth. And I think that shit's frustrating. I think that's actually what's at the heart of all of this, is that there's not one single universal truth other than people change, other than change itself, right? Change and uncertainty are the only two like certainties in the universe. And there will even people who will argue that that's not true. So it's like, at some point, I think Gemini transits come around and they really test people's capacity for open-mindedness and like a lack of strict, rigid rules, you know. I think all air signs kind of do that, honestly. It's why people get frustrated with air transits and why a lot of people just tune the shit out, because it's like, at some point, what does anything mean then? You know? And that's why I'm always like, on the Sagittarius end, like, you can, stand at the top of the hill and demand that everybody, share the beliefs that you have so that you can all assimilate to one truth. But at the end of the day, just like we talked about with Saturn stuff too, everybody has their own experience that informs their own beliefs and that informs their own convictions. And so the point of Sagittarius to me is not necessarily to convince other people, but it's to stand 10 toes down on what you believe and move in accordance to your own beliefs and values, and let that determine, the relationships that you're in and the spaces that you occupy, instead of trying to, and I guess there's like a place for that, not to get off topic with myself, but I guess there's a place for trying to impose your beliefs on others, especially if it's like, going to keep other people safe, or if it's going to create some kind of shared truth and shared beliefs. But I think there has to be some acceptance that everybody's not going to agree, and that's okay. That's why there are squares. Mercurial squares to both of the Jupiter placements, is that at the end of the day, everyone's not going to agree. And it's very frustrating, but it is what it is. We have to figure out a way to move to get along, or to function as a civilization in spite of that. So I hope that made sense, but let me see what y'all are saying. Taurus rising, non-binary person here, and it's very much that. Absolutely. Jupiter and Saturn and Taurus. Thank you for describing Taurus as something other than the police, man. That definitely resonates, especially with things like invisible disabilities and not fitting in. Absolutely. Elizabeth, hi. Absolutely. Yeah, there's so many aspects. I think this is part of the Taurus and Aquarius square as well, is that there are going to be parts of yourself, your self concept, your identity that aren't visible, that all you can do is talk about it. All you can do is speak to it, and people are either going to believe you or they're not. But it just, again, in the very Saturn way, just is what it is. And if you're waiting to get that validation from people who just refuse to see it in you, it's not going to come. Like, it's just not. They have to have a whole like reboot of their own concept of themselves and the worlds in order to get on board with your concept of self and the world, especially if it's something that goes against the norms of a society, which I think is where we come into this whole full moon thing between Scorpio and Taurus. It's like there are going to be some people who don't fucking conform. Get over it. Get over it. There are going to be some people who don't fit neatly into this little box of what you think a person should be. And those people also deserve to have rights. And those people also deserve to have community and to have care and a sense of belonging somehow through their differences, you know? We need differences. We need the things about us that make us unique and that make us feel different. Otherwise, we lose ourselves. Like the whole purpose of Mars as a planet is to draw a line of separation between you and other people so that you know who the fuck you are. You're the person who has to live in your body. You're the person who has to make decisions for yourself on a daily basis. You are the person who has to get yourself up out of bed and out into the world and make decision after decision of your own will and autonomy to move through life. Like you need those differences. If you are just constantly tethered to your mother, your family, your partner, your siblings, your teachers, your priest, your whoever it is, are you really you or are you just an extension of them? And that's where that Mars and Leo should be pissing me off, because Mars and Leo placements in general will try and tell you that you are only the people who see you and validate you and who like hold you up in this particular position. You are only the people whose names that you share. You are only the people who you know, you are only the people who you come from. And that's just not the full picture. You have parts of yourself that are unique and specific to you that deserve to be seen and recognized and validated by other people as well. Otherwise, you cease to be an individual. It's not to say that you don't need communities and you don't need help from other people. You need both, but you need both in reasonable amounts. You need Venus and you need Mars in reasonable amounts, but you cease to be an individual when you try to get rid of your Mars. So you need your fucking Mars. You need your Mars. I don't have Taurus placements, but the whole police thing always felt wrong to me. Yeah, it's just not a full picture. I think it was a certain someone's bitterness about the ways that they don't fit in and the ways that other people maybe make them feel a way about not fitting in. But sometimes you just gotta wear your freak flag. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes you just gotta be different in the ways that you're different, and other people ain't gonna like it, and that's fine. I think that's why people like Scorpio shit really gets in people's ass, because you feel it. You can't not feel Scorpio shit. It's annoying. If you very much don't want to feel Scorpio shit. Who was I talking to that we said what did we say? I think I was talking to Jim and we were saying like how the different water signs are, and it was like Pisces is like being in a lake, like in some kind of closed body of water with a whole bunch of other people's feelings, and it's all like mushed together, and sometimes you need to get out of that to feel your own feelings. Or like Pisces is like the experience of being in like dirty lake water full of everybody else's feelings, and you like can't differentiate what your feelings are. And then Cancer is like being in the ocean, just like constantly riding the waves of all of the feelings of the entire world and feeling overwhelmed by it. And Scorpio is like getting out of the pot of boiling water because it's going to kill you if you stay in there. It was something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was, but Scorpio literally being the feeling of discomfort that arises whenever you're being made to assimilate into something that you don't fucking identify with. Like it's just not you. And it feels very ick. It feels very much like it's trying to erase you. It feels like it's trying to consume you in a way that erases your individuality. And that feeling that comes up is like, no, I don't feel that way. You can't make me feel that way. You can't make me agree with you. It's fine if you disagree with me, and if we are in disagreement about this thing, like whatever, but you can't make me feel something that I don't feel, or you can't make me not feel something that I feel. That just is there. Whatever that means, we'll work on it, but you know, it doesn't just go away. It's literally part of the body. And how it feels on the inside is not necessarily what it looks like on the outside. It just be like that sometimes. Y'all feel me? Y'all hear me? Communication is so complex. It is. It's just an approximation for life. Like, you can only do so much with it. That's why we got so many different languages all over the world, and they all have different words for different things. Hey, Sloan. Good morning. A black student that I mentor said two white women started talking about race and literally turned to her and said, X, you're black. What do you think? It's like, what? People would do that shit all the time. I remember people, whenever I was younger, used to be like, well, Winter's black and it doesn't bother them. And it's like, well, first of all, there's a power dynamic here that y'all may not be aware of, that you would absolutely believe that I don't have a problem with it because I'm trying to keep myself safe. But in reality, I go home and I talk about you. I go home and I talk about you. Uh yeah. Damn, that Gemini word got me thinking about myself differently. Now I understand my sister sign more. Yeah, I think Gemini is just about having flexibility for the meaning of things and the awareness that like meanings can change. I think that's why people don't like Gemini, and I think why tropicals also have a lot of beef with cancers, because I think tropical cancers are sidereal Geminis, and this whole thing of like constantly changing and fluctuating emotions and opinions and ideas and things, like feeling one way one day and then feeling a different way, because Mercury and the moon, they both move very quickly compared to the other planets in the zodiac. So of course they change their minds, they change their feelings, they move on from things quickly. They might have tantrums about something one day and then, you know, have moved on from it the next. It's just constant change. And yeah, they be calling us two-faced, which, you know, I do think Taurus and Gemini both can be two-faced in their own ways. Um, I do think there's like a gossipy nature to Gemini that is, I'm not going to say it's harmless necessarily, but like gossip also serves a function, serves a communal function. It's making me think about I think 3 of Cups it is. Kind of makes me think about that card and just this idea that like gossip and like hearsay and people just discussing the experiences that they're having with other people, um it serves a function just in terms of like you kind of need to know what's going on with people in your community, or you need to know what's going on with people in your family, or just like there's, and I don't know, obviously you can take that too far, but it does serve a function, especially if you're talking about like, you know, abusive dynamics or harmful dynamics that are happening in the group, and so behaving a certain way with one person but not with others. It's how you call out bullying. Obviously you can take gossiping too far to where it becomes like straight up libel and slandering other people, mischaracterizing other people, and I don't think it needs to go that far necessarily, but I do think there's some merit to just sharing the experience that you're having or listening to the experiences that other people have had so that you can have a little bit more skepticism versus just constantly taking things at face value and leaning into the naivety and the gullibility that Gemini is also vulnerable to. It's like, I feel like there's a naivety and like an ignorance that Gemini can have that makes Gemini want to, that one makes Gemini fall for shit easily, or to maybe spread propaganda easily, if we're going back to the whole Gemini Sagittarius axis, which is not good, you know. And then there is also the, again, the gossipy kind of two-faced nature of that's also worthy of critique. And I think without those conversations, it's easy to just like think something is one way and take it at face value and never question it. So those are some things that I think also come up in this, where you do form beliefs about people and things based on the conversations that you have. And you also, the only way to counter those narratives is to present a different perspective or a different story or a different angle of something. So all of that is in this too. Um, anything else I want to say before I pull cards? A friend told me Chisme is news. Yeah, exactly. I'm not gossiping, I'm researching. Yes, also that. Very true. Collecting information from a variety of sources. Because we also don't experience people the same way. Otherwise, there'd be no need for synastry in astrology. The way your chart bumps up against somebody else's chart is just going to be different. Because you both got different placements and different ecosystems you're working with. I love a good shuffle. All right, let's pull some cards about the Scorpio full moon. I feel like I was talking so fast, by the way. Watch this back in 0.5 times speed. Or negative 0.5, negative 1 speed. I'm like, I gotta get the thoughts out quickly. The caffeine demon said, hurry. Hey, Jim, I was just talking about you. Well, I wasn't talking about you, but I was talking about a conversation that we were having about all the water signs and the bodies of water that they relate to, if you remember. And how we said Scorpio was a pot of boiling water. The pot of boiling water that's like, get the fuck out. It's hot. And Pisces being that murky lake water with everybody else's feelings. I'm sitting here shuffling these cards because it's very stimmy. I like it. Okay. Calling on the elevated and healed ancestors. Throwing cards around. We are gathered here today to discuss the full moon in Scorpio. And we would like to know what you have to say about it. What insights and guidance you have for us. Oh, no. What do we need to know and how do we need to move? All right. Tell me something good. We have. Oh. Oh, the lovers. Peter. The lovers is our context for today. I love that. With all this Gemini in the sky. There's that point where new cards start getting less stiff and more pliable. That is just so delightful. It is. I love a well-loved deck. That's definitely this one. Well-loved. The lovers as our context. I love that. And then we have okay, lots of majors in this spread. Doing a 3-card spread. So, lovers on the bottom for our context. This is already giving reflections. Reflections and projections in that card for me personally. Seeing yourself in other people. Our first card in the situation position, what it is that we're dealing with is the Chariot. Spicy. The Chariot. 9 of Wands in our obstacle position. The thing that is that we're actually struggling with. 9 of Wands. And the Hermit. as the solution, the path forward. Thinking about the lovers on top of the 9 of wands as well. But the chariot, I need to sit with this. Hold on, let me think. Because I don't know what this means. I'm sure it's really obvious to some people in the chat. But what does this mean to me? Hmm. If we start with the lovers as like what's framing this whole conversation, the lovers is about it is about relationships. Um I think it's also about duality in a way, two different parts like coming together to form a whole. But yeah, I really do tend to like the idea of the lovers being like looking in the mirror, you know, whether you're looking through the mirror, through the literal mirror and looking at a reflection of yourself, or you are seeing yourself in other people or bumping up against parts of yourself in other people. It's like a very seventh house card to me. So it can literally be like your romantic partners and partnerships, but it's something about like learning to embrace parts of yourself as well. So something about wholeness with this card that I think is a little different than like Two of Cups, for example, which is another card that I think has a similar vibe. But Two of Cups is kind of this like what you put in is what you get out, or matching that energy thing. Whereas the Lovers is like, yeah. Something else coming up with the Lovers is like, while I'm thinking about Mars and Leo, is like internalizing projections as well, or internalized projections as well. Um, there's a song called "Do You Wish That You Loved Me?" That's someone talking to the mirror. Yeah. I posted on my business Instagram last week, I think sometime. It was like a bunch of shadow work, bunch of different like ways to do shadow work that was very timely for Mars and Leo. That did involve just like looking in the mirror for an extended period of time and looking long enough that you see yourself, you know? Like, have y'all ever done that? This is probably related to this spread, I think, because it that feels timely. But have y'all ever done that where you really like looked in the mirror, just like looked at yourself in the mirror in the way that you would look at another person? Especially like if you looked at yourself in the mirror the way that you look at someone that you're in love with. You know what I mean? If you looked at yourself in the mirror the way that Ariana looks at Cynthia Erivo, have you ever done that? And you just like look. And there's a point where you're like looking at yourself in the superficial way that you're just like seeing what you look like. And then you're looking at yourself in a way that you really see yourself. Like you realize that you're looking at a person who is conscious and alive and breathing and living. And it gets a little trippy. I wouldn't recommend doing that on drugs, but some people do that on drugs. But um coming after the Hierophant, to me, Lovers is about commitment to your own moral code, which Gemini is notoriously flaky at. Ooh, that's interesting too. Good point. Coming after the Hierophant. Yeah. Hierophant, Hierophant. Um, so yeah, it's making me think about like really whatever this metaphor is of like seeing yourself, actually seeing yourself and your humanity. Um, yeah, actually seeing yourself. And so even if we like stick with this theme that Samaje is talking about as well, because I have a feeling this relates to the Hermit too. At the end of the spread is like, if we're talking about a moral commitment or a moral code to yourself, but we're also talking about like the way that you see yourself, or the way that you like the narratives, the stories that come up whenever you look at yourself long enough and you realize that this is a person. And my dad will kind of talk about this too. Like there'll be some moments that he says he wakes up and he looks in the mirror. He has Aquarius placements also, by the way. He looks in the mirror and he's like, Jesus, like I have aged so much. Like I look so different. So it's just like, what are the thoughts that come up about yourself, the stories, the narratives that come up about yourself whenever you look in the mirror? And similarly, whenever you are engaging with other people, if I'm sticking with my own seventh house theme of this card, like what comes up when you are, and in the spirit of Scorpio full moon, whenever you're looking at other people and you're judging them, like what is it that you're actually seeing? And is that something that you see and like that you rebuke within yourself that leads you then to form all of these like nasty judgments about other people and who they should or shouldn't be, and how they should or shouldn't like behave or move through society? So something there about all that in the Lover's card, if that's the context for the rest of these cards. So then the Chariot as the situation. The Chariot is a card that kind of confuses me sometimes, so insight on this card is also welcome. But sometimes this is like, I think the artist talks about this card as like she's standing on two different motorcycles, and so the motorcycles, in order for her to move forward with this task or this pursuit that she's in, both sides of this have to be moving at the same speed. Otherwise she's going to be knocked off balance, or she's going to do a really uncomfortable split. She might hurt herself, whatever. So both of these things have to be moving together. So we're kind of sticking with this like Gemini duality, two sides of the same coin thing with both the Lovers and the Chariot. If these things need to be in alignment, going back to the commitment to the moral code, alignment being possible to like push a mission forward, or to move forward in general, we'll say, to charge forward with like power and audacity, if I'm thinking about Venus and Aries right now too. And also just like, I think this could be representative of Mars and Leo as well. And I keep coming back to Mars and Leo because it's the ruler of the full moon in Scorpio. And the sun also being very bright in this card too. Moving firmly in alignment with yourself or your differences, or your uniqueness, or whatever it is, your vision, whatever the thing is that's like guiding you, needs to be in alignment with how you see yourself. Something like that. This is the situation. Yeah, something about alignment. Alignment being a necessary part of the process of like charging forward with something. And maybe that makes sense if like, if we're talking about Gemini being kind of flaky and being unprincipled in some ways, which I think is a strong word, but we'll go with it. It can be very easy then to be like pulled in multiple directions and not know, and like kind of get stuck in a freeze, which, I think is the case with the Chariot. Like if you're trying to move forward but being pulled in different directions, you're not really going to move forward. You're kind of just going to be like stuck in one place. So this is, I think, saying something about the power that comes from being true to yourself, the power that comes from embracing your differences. I don't know. Let's move on to the Nine of Wands. If Nine of Wands is the struggle that we're having, Nine of Wands is a struggle card to me. Like this man looks so stressed out. you can see all of the utensils that he uses in the back. They're all chewed up out of the stress and the frustration of this like very long ongoing project and just like being worn out. But you must like struggle through. Like the struggle is part of the process of getting to the other side. The struggle is what I'm thinking is like the struggle builds character as well. The struggle is like where you really, it's making me think about when I used to play sports and like you really learn new things about yourself through adversity. And they talk about like adversity builds character. I would use that lightly because sometimes adversity is just traumatizing. But maybe that's part of this too. You know, we like kind of deal with traumatizing topics or, you know, struggles, rejection, alienation, and all of those things that come up with Scorpio as well. And those being um, like whenever we talk about healing from things that have happened to us or healing from different traumas or whatever, there's like this idea of wanting to kind of like, I have a bunch of different things coming up while I'm thinking about this, but there's this way of like almost wanting to be healed to the point that you don't like that part of you doesn't exist anymore. It's like this like cleansing. It's making me, ironically, it's making me think about in religion, in Christianity, when they're like, oh, if you repent, then you're like cleansed of all of your sins, kind of thing. When like the experience, what am I trying to say? I know this feels, I don't know if this feels all over the place to y'all. I know this feels all over the place, but I'm going somewhere with it. Like you can't, that's what it is. I said this in a workshop once. I'm trying to find my analogy that'll make sense. But I said this in a Taurus and Scorpio workshop a couple years ago before I got hurt, where I was like, if you and then this ended up happening to me, but it's like if you injure yourself, if you tear your ankle, it's not that you'll never learn how to walk again, but the way that you walk after you tear your ankle is going to be different forever because that injury is like kind of a part of you now. That the struggle that you went through with the injury itself and all of the pain that it caused and then everything you had to do to rehabilitate yourself, like you can't erase any part of that journey. You can't forget that any part of that journey happened, and even if you do cognitively forget it, your body will always remember. So it's not a matter of like erasing the struggle that you went through. It's more about um kind of honoring it and kind of accepting that as part of your journey and using that information as you move forward. Um, so you kind of have to learn how to walk differently after that experience. You'll never walk the same again. But the point isn't to walk the same again, you know? The point is to care for yourself differently moving forward. So there's something between these three cards so far, and this one in particular, as it sits below the lovers in this spread, is like it's really difficult and uncomfortable to embrace those. Mm, actually, with the joint replacement, I very much relate. Yeah. Actually, what's kind of coming up for me now is like, shit, I just lost it. Adversity builds character. The point isn't to walk the same as you did before. The point is to be changed by the experience that happened. It's something about it's something about embracing your shadow, but that doesn't feel right either. But maybe it is. Maybe I'm overthinking it. With the Hermit, then, I think this card coming up in this spread is kind of funny because I remember talking to Jada of Storytelling Tarot about how she was saying that this is I think she said this is a 9-year. I could be wrong, but I think she said that this was a 9-year, and that being the Hermit card, it's a lot of like, especially spiritualists going back inward, like returning to source. And I think she talked about the Hermit card as this like, you know, retreating into yourself and looking at yourself as your source of truth and divine truth rather than being out like proselytizing to everybody else, or rather being out like trying to give advice to everybody. It's like you kind of need to go back inside and like recalibrate, you know, like tuning your intuition or your instrument or whatever it is back into the source that is the self. And I wonder how much of that is related to, you know, all of the things that we've been through in the last several years. It's like we've been changed by so much, and we all have this like desire to go back to normal, to go back to like the way things were. Even if we've acknowledged that things are never going back to the way that they were, there's still a part of us that really wants to be normal, wants things to be normal, wants the world around us to be normal, and it's just not. So I wonder how much this spread at this full moon is like, you know, the discomfort that's required to move in the first place, or to like get back into alignment with yourself by embracing those, you know, those kind of taboo, less favorable parts of yourself, the parts of yourself that are usually rejected or that are pushed away. um it's like the more you can create space and grace for that, I think the less hostile we are towards each other, because we can have like compassion for each other. I'm kind of going off script here, but we can kind of, maybe I'm not, because that's kind of lovers too. We're able to have this kind of grace and compassion for each other that isn't self-abandonment. um Chariot is like life forcing you to move on despite not feeling ready, so it feels right. That's true. That's a good point. That's a good point. Okay, yes. It's making me think about yeah, that's a good point. I really feel that in a bunch of different ways, because it's like sometimes things, you know, we have all this fire in the sky now, and all of this air, and if fire and air get together, like something's going to change, because you're not stuck in this way of having to be super pragmatic and logical, and sometimes even like weighed down by your own fears. Thing that happens whenever you're in just earth and water all the time, it's like you kind of have to be methodical and practical and pragmatic, and move in ways that are just like kind of restricted by, you know, by the things that you feel like are too big to change. But then earth and fire get around, and they're like, well, have we considered looking at it this way? And when we look at it this way, from this perspective, now what can we do? What's actually available to us that wasn't there before? um so I wonder how much of that is, if we're looking at this in the personal sense, like having to acknowledge within ourselves, the limits that we've placed on ourselves based on um some kind of truth, whether about the world or about ourselves, that we are refusing to acknowledge. And once you acknowledge it, and you actually like have a sense of acceptance about that, how does that allow you then to move forward? And I guess the process of doing that, like, you do have to really sit down and kind of struggle with yourself first, and like just kind of reflect on everything that has happened and the ways that we've all been changed. And in doing so, how does that allow you to have more grace and compassion in a way that says like, look, I know what happened to you, and I understand how you feel, and also this is still your mess to clean up. Like me, I think there's a way that you can have compassion for people that becomes like self-abandonment, because now you're overextending and making excuses for things that you're not actually comfortable with, and that don't actually feel good to you, all in the spirit of like trying to have some grace for other people. But then there's the other sense that's like, you know, um I can empathize with you from over here. I can have compassion for the struggle you're having, and still let you have the experience that you're trying to have, or still let myself have the experience that I'm trying to have, without like almost like making excuses for what could be possible for you or for me. And I don't know if I'm saying this the right way, but if I get out of the cards and I just talk about like what is coming up for me, it's just like accountability. Basically, It's accountability that has a level of it's accountability that comes from self-acceptance. And maybe that's the whole Mars and Leo thing because I think sometimes we run away like we don't do the things we're supposed to do because we're avoiding shame. And like in the avoidance of shame, we can, especially with Mars and Leo, like try to uphold an image of ourselves that just isn't true, that isn't real. And we can also demonize the experiences we went through that, maybe we didn't behave the best, or maybe we weren't behaving in a way that's in alignment with who we see ourselves as. But, we can say, well, I wasn't being myself, or that's not who I was, or whatever. But like we've been saying this whole time, that is who you were, though. It doesn't mean that you can't change. It doesn't mean that you have to be that way forever. It doesn't mean that you are beholden to this one version of yourself. It just means that you have to accept that that's who you were at the time, and circumstances have changed that are now requiring you to be different. So it's like there's some of like, do you trust yourself to actually be different? There's some like, do you trust yourself to see the experience that you went through with like clear eyes? Do you trust yourself to, and I bring trust into it because of all the mutable in the sky, but um if other people are changing and also actually behaving differently or behaving the same, like, do you trust yourself to actually see that for what it is and move forward in a way that acknowledges all of those shifts or changes? So I don't know if this is coming across coherently, but it's basically that same summary of what we've been talking about that says like, yeah, there are um obviously a ton of different ways that you can be a person and that you can live. And sometimes um the way that you need to be a person and move forward, the like what's required of you to grow and change as a person also requires you to like have some self-awareness and self-acceptance that like you have changed and will continue to change, and it's kind of like your duty to do so. I don't know. This feels a little all over the place to me. Let me write something down real quick. I need the astro math to make sense. Um, Moon in Scorpio to Mars in Leo. Mars in Leo is also responsible for Venus in Aries. And out of those guys, Venus in Aries is responsible for Sun in Taurus. Sun in Taurus is also responsible for Mars and Leo. So we got a little loop going on there. And then outside of that loop, we have Mercury in Gemini, who is responsible for Jupiter in Gemini, who is responsible for Saturn in Pisces. So there's kind of two different things going on there. Things are kind of chaotic where I live. Chariot is life forcing you to move on despite not feeling ready to do so. That's kind of making me think about Venus and Aries. Because I do feel like Aries, one good thing about Aries and Aries transits is that they will make you move whether you're ready or not. And it's kind of like, what does it really mean to be ready? You know? I think mutable signs, especially Mercury ruled signs, can feel like they need more information, more information, more information, more information before you can make a decision. And then you get analysis paralysis and then you don't move. So I think the lovers here too with the hermit is talking about being guided by that like intuition, the inner compass that I think especially if we're talking about Scorpio too, I think sometimes it is doing that thing that feels wrong or that feels unconventional. Like it feels wrong because it's different than what you usually do. We talk about that with like, things like if you are used to people pleasing and then you set a boundary, you feel like you're being mean. It feels wrong. Like I need to be selfless and I need to give parts of myself away, but it's like, no, in this instance, it would maybe benefit you better to feel like why. Well, in this instance, I was going to say it would make you feel it not make you feel better, but it might be more beneficial to identify why that feels wrong to do as far as like the going inward thing and the hard work that it takes to go inward. But there's also this like sometimes you're just going to be the bad guy. Like sometimes again, sometimes people just aren't going to like you. They're not going to like the choices that you make or the decisions that you make because they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't do it that way or whatever, but it's like I'm not you. And if you have that grace, again, you have that like compassion for yourself of like, well, yeah, the other person wouldn't have did it this way because they're not me. Then when other people are doing some shit that you wouldn't do, it's like, well, I'm not them, so I don't know why they did that. um, and it's not really. This kind of goes back to what we were talking about last week. It's not really my. It's not necessarily at this point in time my like responsibility to understand the full extent and reasoning for why they made that decision. I just have to decide if I'm okay with it or not. And if I'm okay with it or not is going to determine how I move versus constantly being stuck in this, like trying to understand, trying to make sense, trying to rationalize. Like, you just got to make a decision. Am I okay with this behavior? Am I not? And once I answer that question, what am I going to do about that? So I don't know. That's kind of what I think. What do y'all think? Either way, we must move forward. Some different shit happened to you. You just have to move different after that, right? Is that the gist? Circumstances have changed whether you want to acknowledge that or not. Therefore, you must also change and move with the changes. Allow yourself to change. It's like your differences are the thing that allow you to move in a way that is honest to you versus what it would be to somebody else. I don't know. That feels relevant to me, and I don't really know why. Maybe it'll make sense on Wednesday. Because as of right now, the moon's still in Libra. So the moon is still answering to Venus and Aries right now. I do think just in terms of astrology in general, that might be this week might be kind of messy, so y'all tread lightly. It's already off to a messy start. I just kind of see it getting messier because that Scorpio shit. Ew. Mm. All right. Well, I think that's all I have to say today. That's all I have to say. I agree. This is kind of about accepting the choices you've made as the vehicle for your self concept today and having grace for your choices that have made you hate yourself. Yo, man, does anybody watch Ginny and Georgia? Has anyone watched the new season? I just finished it yesterday. And honestly, like, well, I can't spoil it for y'all, but that seems relevant to the whole premise of that show. And, astrology be in TV shows and the timings that they come out. It's just like, I'm actually glad you said that because I do feel like that does frame the conversation really well in a succinct way. Because it is like, yeah, you're not always going to like, it's like you're not always going to like every version of yourself at every given moment, especially as your ideals and your beliefs change. Um, you're not always gonna like yourself, but and you're not always gonna like the decisions that you made. There's like something about regret in there too. But at the end of the day, you still got to keep moving forward. It's like you can't just keep sitting and beating yourself up or, letting life just kind of drive you. Like you gotta coming back to the chariot, like you gotta drive the boat still. At the end of the day, you still gotta drive the boat. You still gotta drive the boat. You still gotta live in your body. So I guess we said this earlier when I was talking about Mars. At the end of the day, you still got to do you, regardless of what other people say, regardless of the part of you that is judging yourself, regardless of that moment that you maybe acted out of alignment. And you got to get back into alignment, whatever that is. So yeah, maybe that's the word I'll end on is you got to drive the boat still. So weird. Weird. I'm gonna have to go sit with that. That feels like something in there. Okay. Well, I am done. That's all I have to say about that. Thank you, Samaje, for the assist. Sometimes some card spreads be feeling too big for me, for my little brain. When there's a bunch of majors involved, I'm like, it feels like competing priorities sometimes. I got a lot to sit with that. Yeah. Intense. Yeah. Thank y'all for listening. Thank y'all for hanging out with me this Sunday and every Sunday, like you always do. It's always such a delight to see y'all and to talk to y'all. So, yeah, we might have to revisit this conversation because this was a big spread. We'll have to revisit this because that feels like ominous. But the Lovers is ultimately a positive card, right? Not that I necessarily need everything to be positive. I know a Scorpio moon is going to be uncomfortable. It just is. As someone who lives at Scorpio placements, we're talking about that boiling pot of water, bitch. Like, it's going to be hot. But, real big words for Elmo. It can be. Yeah, I'm gonna say because it's the Lovers and the Nine of Wands directly below it, it's itchy. It's itchy. And it's just gonna have to be itchy this week. So whatever. Um okay, I will talk to y'all next week when the sun enters Gemini and we get out of this Taurus shit. In the meantime, I hope that y'all have a good full moon. I hope that y'all have a great week. I hope that everyone stays safe. Don't talk to the police. Um, don't talk to the police, period. Y'all have a great week. Thank y'all so much. I'll see you soon. Bye.